Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, a show about garden news, botanical history, and literature. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and today is April 9th. Today we celebrate a botanist remembered as the father of forestry. We'll also learn about a 19th century female garden writer who loved wildflowers. We'll recognize the broadcasting anniversary of a popular garden television program, and we'll hear words from a poet who was admired by Vita Sackville West. And this poem compares the iris with the tulip. We grow that garden library today with a book about houseplants and how to keep them happy and healthy. And then we'll wrap things up with a story from last year. It's about sidewalk chalk and labeling neighborhood trees. And it caused a sensation on Twitter on this day last year. But first, I just want to remind you that today is Friday, and that means that today is the day that my Friday newsletter comes out. So if you'd like to receive that, all you need to do is head on over to the website for the show. It's thedailygardener.org. And then once you're there, right on the homepage, there's a place where you can sign up. And I try to make the newsletter like you're getting a wonderful note from a garden friend. So if you want to go ahead and subscribe to that, you can do so over at the website. And then if you're a huge fan of the show and you haven't left a review for the show over on Podchaser, I would love it if you would head on over there and leave a review for the show. I set a goal of getting 50 reviews for the show in 2021, and I'm over halfway to my goal. And I always appreciate the listeners that take the time to do that, to show their support for the show in that way. Now, again, that website is called Podchaser, P-O-D, and then the word chaser. And you just head on over there, type in The Daily Gardener, and then leave a review for the show. It's just that simple. And if you go ahead and do that, I will definitely give you a shout out both on the show and in the Facebook group for listeners of the podcast. All right, it's time for today's curated news. Today's curated news comes from one of my favorite blogs. It's called Brain Pickings, and it's written by Maria Popova. And this particular post is about one of my all-time favorite gardeners, Derek Jarman. And the title of Maria's article is Growing Through Grief. Derek Jarman on gardening as creative redemption, consecration of time, and training ground for presence, or what most of us call mindfulness. In this article, Maria writes that if modern gardening has a patron saint, it must be the English artist, filmmaker, and LGBT rights activist Derek Jarman. In 1989, after his HIV diagnosis and his father's death, Derek left London and bought a small Victorian fisherman's hut on the shingled shores of Kent. He named the property Prospect Cottage. He created rudimentary sundials with beach pebbles on the shore. And of course, he gardened. He planted calendula, rue, chamomile, the Shirley poppy, nasturtium, dianthus, purple iris, and his favorite plant, sea kale. Derek once wrote, "I have never been happier than last week. I look up and see the sea outside my window, and today I saw my first bumblebee, planted lavender, and clumps of red-hot poker." Well, I tell you what, if you are a fan of Derek Jarman or his garden, Or if you simply believe that the garden is a place where you can find healing and restoration and grounding, you should definitely check out this post by Maria. And all you need to do to find it is head on over to the Facebook group for the show. And then when you're in the group, head on up to the magnifying glass and search for the word Derek, and this post will pop up. Now, if you're not in the Facebook group, it is so easy to join. All you need to do is the next time you're on Facebook, just search for Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend, and then request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. It's time for today's botanical history. Here's botanical history for today, April 9th. Today is the birthday of the American environmentalist and botanist Joseph Trimble Rothrock. Plagued by sickness as a child, Joseph felt called by the great outdoors. He wrote, "I just had to go to the woods. Throughout my entire life, I have sought the out of doors as a refuge against impending physical ills." One of Joseph's first jobs was working in the private herbarium of Asa Gray at Harvard while he was a student there studying natural sciences. And Joseph also befriended his geology professor, Louis Agassiz, whose motto was, "Study nature, not books." After leaving Harvard to fight in the Civil War, Joseph sustained wounds at Fredericksburg in Burnside's fight. Later, at an Army hospital, he shook hands with President Lincoln. In his old age, someone took a picture of Joseph and labeled it the Old White Pine and the Father of Forestry. In the photo, Joseph stands in front of a huge white pine. He has a long white beard and a kind expression, and his right hand holds a walking stick. The photo notes say that his right little finger was amputated at Fredericksburg. After recovering from his injuries in the Civil War, Joseph was planning to resume his studies at Harvard. But when he learned that his old professors, including Asa Gray, were planning to serve in the war, Joseph took Professor Gray's place, and he served another 3 months. Joseph went on to teach botany, became a surgeon, he went on expeditions, and he even wrote A Flora of Alaska. After becoming a Michaud lecturer on forestry, Joseph took a 9-month sabbatical to study under renowned botanist Anton de Bary at the University of Strasbourg in Germany. By 1893, Joseph was back in the United States, and he began to investigate the challenges that logging posed to Pennsylvania's forests, or to Penn's woods, as he called them. During this time, destructive forest fires were all too common, and long before Smokey the Bear, Joseph led the effort to prevent forest fires. Joseph observed that, quote, "Almost every forest fire is the result of ignorance, carelessness, or crime." In addition to educating people about forest fires, Joseph took a stance against deforestation. He also educated the public on tree propagation and forest restoration. In 1901, after spending years battling farmers and timber barons, Joseph reflected, 20 years ago, I began agitation upon the forestry question. I have kept at it ever since. You have no idea of the amount of work it requires to change a generation from tree destroyers to tree restorers. It is something akin to a second birth. Today, Joseph Trimble Rothrock is remembered by the Rothrock State Forest in Pennsylvania. And every year on his birthday, today, April 9th, the entire Pennsylvania school system recognizes this day as Arbor Day. And today is the anniversary of the death of the British botanist, author, pragmatist, and survivor Phoebe Lankester, who died on this day, April 9th in 1900. Phoebe's birthday happens to be tomorrow. Born in 1825 as Phoebe Pope, she married the naturalist Edwin Lankester, who was a coroner and a medical reformer. Together, they had 11 children. When Phoebe was 49, Edwin died, and so she pursued writing in order to take care of herself and her family. Phoebe wrote under a number of pseudonyms. Her books were published under the name Mrs. Lankester. She also wrote a syndicated column under the signature Penelope for 20 years. Her work appealed to the masses. She wrote in a friendly and conversational voice. And she wrote about what she knew: plants, educating children, health, and being financially smart. Her book topics ranged from a plain and easy account of the British ferns, written in 1859, to The National Thrift Reader in 1880, where Phoebe wrote, "Often the most thrifty persons are the most generous because they can afford to be so." Phoebe often partnered with the illustrator James Sowerby and other members of the Sowerby family for illustrations in her books. For instance, Phoebe worked with James on 108 full-color drawings for a sweet little book that she called Wildflowers Worth Notice. An advertisement for the book in 1861 shared a question from her charming preface: "What flowers are not worth notice?" Reviews of Phoebe's book were positive, and her plant profiles were, quote, "the special delight of flower gatherers," and included the sundew, the mistletoe, the bog pimpernel, the grass of Parnassus, flax, the white water lily, milkwort, germander speedwell, and so forth. And in addition to sharing her favorite plants, Phoebe included botanical folklore, quotes, and poems, which makes it a sentimental favorite for many gardeners. And it was on this day, April 9th, in 1947, that the very first episode of Gardener's Question Time was broadcast from the Broad Oak Hotel in the Singing Room. The program is still broadcast today to millions of listeners and has answered over 35,000 questions to date. Originally named How Does Your Garden Grow?, the program was an offshoot to the wartime Dig for Victory campaign. Now, over the years, the panel of experts has changed, but as they told the audience on their 40th anniversary episode, times change, so do people, but gardening goes on forever. It's time for Unearthed Words. Today's unearthed words come to us from the English poet E.J. Scovell, whose birth name was Edith Joy. The great gardener and garden writer and garden designer Vita Sackville West was a huge fan of her work. Today's poem is called The Deaths of Flowers, and in this poem, Edith compares the iris and the tulip and how the flowers age and die. Here's Deaths of Flowers by E.J. Scovell. I would, if I could choose, age and die outwards as a tulip does. not as this iris drawing in, incoiling its complex, strange, taut inflorescence, willing itself a bud again, though all achieved is no more than a clenched sadness, the tears of gum not flowing. I would choose the tulip's reckless way of going, whose petals answer light, altering by fractions from closed to wide, from one through many perfections, till wrecked, flamboyant, strayed beyond recall. Like flakes of fire, they piecemeal fall. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, How to Houseplant by Heather Rodino. This book came out in 2019, and the subtitle is A Beginner's Guide to Making and Keeping Plant Friends. In this book, Heather starts out by covering all the bases for general houseplant care, like lighting, watering, humidity, soil, repotting, and propagation. She also covers plant shopping, one of my favorite things, and plant grooming, another one of my favorite things. Next, Heather details her top 50 houseplants, and she provides a wonderful profile for each of them. Heather's picks include the Boston fern, the fiddle leaf fig, the Chinese evergreen, the Meyer lemon tree, the nerve plant, and the ZZ plant, just to name a few. Heather aims to help houseplant owners feel more confidence as they grow their plant collections. She even includes tips and lists for all kinds of plant aspects, including plants that are pet-friendly. And I love that she includes a top 5 plant list for frequent travelers. This book is 192 pages of houseplant basics, along with favorite plants that you should consider adding to your own collection. You can get a copy of How to Houseplant by Heather Rodino and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $8. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. Last year, on this day, April 9th in 2020, in the early days of the worldwide lockdown due to COVID-19, an English arborist started adding a charming touch to her neighborhood by labeling local trees with sidewalk chalk. This marvelous story started gaining traction when Elizabeth Archer tweeted this: "To whomever is chalking names and descriptions of trees on the pavements across Walthamstow, I love you. This made my heart sing today." Well, over 120,000 people from all over the world agreed, and they liked and retweeted Elizabeth's tweet, which included 2 pictures that showed the charming sidewalk chalk labels for a London plane tree, also known as the European sycamore. And in this case, the artist included a little snippet that said, "My favorite takes pollution out of the air." And then the next picture showed a tree labeled sycamore. And then next to it, they wrote, "A real survivor grows anywhere!" exclamation point. Well, the next day, after sharing that original tweet, Elizabeth posted, "Just to let you all know, I found her," in about 10 minutes, because Walthamstow people are wonderful. And it's the brilliant at Curious Wilds. Well, at Curious Wilds happened to be Rachel Summers, who runs the Curious Wilds Forest School, a place to explore, connect, and have fun with nature, embracing local, urban, wild spaces. A qualified forest school practitioner and trainer, Rachel was originally a primary school teacher before discovering the joy of learning outdoors. And her little sidewalk chalk tree labeling was a natural extension of what she does every single day. And as Rachel likes to say, her hands are never quite mud-free. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Maple Grove and Wyoming, Minnesota, with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, and Eric Begay. If you want to read today's show notes, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. And don't forget that you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, you can always get in touch by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you on Monday.